Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Findaway Productions with your co-hosts, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What is happening, coaches? Welcome back to the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. That over there is Coach Kenny Simpson. Coach, it is clinic season. How is Houston?
Hot. Houston is hot. It's about 80 degrees, so I did not pack well. I didn't bring any short sleeve shirts. My wife was telling me, she told me to bring it, and I didn't listen. I thought, well, surely it won't be that hot, but I think it's going to be pretty warm. So good for Houston. It's still kind of chilly up where we are, and obviously if you're watching this, you can tell in the hotel room, clinic will start this evening, so it should cool down by then, I hope.
Yeah. I'm still looking forward to, we're what, 3 weeks out from Boston, which hopefully it's not 80 in Boston. I mean, I know you would enjoy that, but
It won't be. It'll be probably cold.
I'm ready for the cold. Well, that's good. How many is this now? How many have you done this year so far?
Oh, I think this is either 4 or 5, and we have 9 total. So when I know, for us, it's big time. It's also coaching hiring season. So for those who don't know, Daniel just got his first head coaching job. That's why he's rocking the gear. Looks good.
Yeah, it's it's been a blessing, Kenny. The getting through the interview process and getting hired. And I'm about a week in now since I accepted the job. It was board approved earlier this week on Monday, and of course today they're out of school, so we got to be in the building and talking with coaches. And man, the foundation was laid so well by the prior head coach and the staff and the administration. Like it's been a very, very easy job to take. And, when you're looking forward, sometimes you get a job and there's a lot of things to fix. As I've been told, obviously my first, I've not had to experience that, but this is so far not shown to be that. It really is just install the culture that I want to look at in the next few years, having it established and getting back to work. So they've seen a lot of success. The foundation is laid. I'm not taking over a bad job. When people say good jobs don't come open, that was not the case here. So we're pumped. The family's excited to get into the community, and they've all been super supportive. From youth coaches to parents to obviously the staff coaches, administration, everything's been really good. So I couldn't ask for a better. I don't know that there's a better opportunity for a first-time head coach than what we're getting right now.
Good. I mean, you should be fired up. I mean, guys that are in that world, and Daniel right now is in it. It's called the honeymoon stage. So if you have requests you want, this is now the time to go ask for those things. I'm sure Daniel's probably already doing that.
And admittedly, I've told them I know this is the honeymoon phase, so we're gonna have a lot of good conversations. I know it'll all at some point it'll end, but I talked to a friend of mine who's been there on administration for the last year, and he's like, I'm a year in and the honeymoon phase hasn't ended. Like it's still going. So it seems to just be a really good culture too. So, I would take that. I'll take no end to the honeymoon phase. I'm okay with that. So,
I mean, just building that's one of the things that, I've got a book coming out. Actually, Daniel's getting to be the second preview. I gave it to one of my coaches that just took a head job. Probably be coming out next year, but it's the first 90 days as the head coach. And, there's a lot of things he's already doing correctly, and I think that'll set him up. A lot of times when you take a head coaching job, it feels like a whirlwind if you're not really sure kind of the approach you want to take, and it can be overwhelming for sure.
I know this episode isn't really about the head coaching gig, but we will have another one of those eventually and kind of get in the job. But this is one of those cases where I planned for this for 4 years, right? And I've gotten turned down time and time again. And I can see now, all that was for a reason. Kind of everything happens for a reason. I've gotten my pastor calls it my spiritual awakening, as I see that, there obviously was a little bit of divine intervention here, because the way it just fell together all of a sudden was great. But What I'm finding is, if you prep that tool chest when it comes time to do the job, and you can just open it, and it's all the tools are there and they're all ready and everything, it just has made it really, really easy, made everything super smooth. So
Good deal,
it's been
man.
good.
Excited for you. We're
I
cheering for
appreciate
you.
it. Real quick, we're going to talk about some sponsors, and then we're going to, no, quote of the week. Let's get our quote of the week first, Coach.
Sure. Quote of the week is coming from Team Themes Volume number 6. So we've got Team Themes Volumes 1 through 5, all available over at fbcoachsimpson.com. You can get those, any of them. They basically all have a quote or several quotes, a video, an overview of whatever the theme that week was. This is coming from what will be coming out in Team Themes Volume number 6. I think the chapter on this one was competitor or competition, something in that world. As an anonymous quote, but the quote was good. It says, "The best competitors have a short memory and have a long focus." And I thought that was pretty good. A lot of times we deal with kids or coaches that we're so worried about making a mistake that we don't do anything. And so you've got to make sure that you weed that out of your program quickly, that, hey, we're going to compete and we're going to fail all the time, but we're going to continue to compete. I think that's one of the biggest changes in mindset that you can give your athletes or coaches, is the not fear of failure, to go out and put forth whatever we're going to do our best and continue to get better.
Yeah, I really like that. At Bristow, we kind of carried a quote. It was like, "Why not? Right? Why not do all these things?" And we never wanted to get rid of. We talk about failure. You don't ever want to drop a scheme because you stunk at it one time, or a gadget play, or a process, or a pillar, or whatever. You got to give them time to mature. You got to give the kids time to figure it all out. So I really like that quote. Jump into the sponsors here real quick, guys. If you haven't already, get to asports.com. Go over and check out all the video board stuff they can do for you, the ad revenue, the fundraising. It's all kind of wrapped up into one. You get a sweet video board, and you get a way to celebrate your program and your kids, and they're going to help you get that big ticket fundraiser process going at the same time. Email mark.bridges@asports.com. Get a hold of Mark. Mark has got all the in and outs. He's been doing it for years and years now. They've put up a ton of video boards across the country. He can kind of help you build your dream out. When I was talking about Winning Edge Performance Analytics, so I finally, I know we talked last time I was going to have a conversation with Doug, and I did. And his kind of 2.0 stuff is coming out, where he's getting, last year was just focused about in-game analytics, and now he's putting together like a pre-game analytics. So game planning your opponent, doing your huddle stuff like you always do, throwing it in his program, and it'll spit out all the reports, and it kind of is auto-populating a lot of the stuff that coaches have been doing for years. So still not AI. It's not assuming or making assumptions or calculating, none of that. It's just building those reports for you so you can get into get into that game planning process a lot quicker, not having to create all those huddle reports or quick cuts or whatever you're using. So check out winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. And Doug's got some really cool things coming up. Still, as far as I know, using the code 20OFF Coaching 101 will get you 20% off your first year with the program. Also, want to mention Threads LLC. Nope, that's not it. Blended Threads LLC. Sorry, Morgan, I screwed it up this time. Blended Threads LLC is a shirts, hats, all the apparel type stuff you want. They're located just south of Jones, just north of Choctaw, Oklahoma, but they're serving the entire nation. So they're doing a lot of big things for firefighters and police and different companies, but they're really getting into the coaching stuff this year. So if you're needing booster club things, if you're needing a pro shop put together, if you're wanting to get some swag for your coaches on sideline, reach out to Morgan. Email is morgan@blendedthreadsllc.com and let her get you some quotes. She's already been working with Bristow, which is where I'm leaving, trying to get them set up for the 1,000-pound clubs shirts this year. So I understand a lot of schools have contracts for certain things. So, just make sure you're working through that. But she wants to help you get things at cheap prices. All right, let's get into it here. We're talking today about how to teach football concepts to high school players, and not just your coaches, right? We want kids, especially Kenny. I know you live in a world of tagging things up. You're going to run buck and you're going to run belly, and we're going to tag some things. We're going to RPO stuff. We're going to read some things, but we need our kids to understand kind of what buck is as a concept. I don't need the guard learning his exact pull kick. I want him to kind of have that big picture of what's really happening here. I do it in the GT counter, GH counter world, and power. We want to understand these things as a concept so we can tag and move people around, and it's not a huge change. So kind of how do we do that? How do we teach our players these patterns and not just the plays?
Well, I mean, you kind of hit on it a little bit. I think you start off teaching the overall concept, as simple as lining them up and just walking through it, all 11 kids on the field, seeing what all 11 kids are doing. You don't have to do that all the time, but I think it's really good initially to line up if we're going to run through, especially a run play that has maybe an RPO attached where they're kind of working together, where they see, okay, this is kind of how this stuff works. So I think it's important that you do build that out first, where everybody knows the idea of what we're trying to accomplish. If you do that, that should clean up a lot of the issues you may have during individual time or drills, because your drills should kind of match that stuff. So we want to show it to them first. Then, in my opinion, I think you need to try to kind of think about everything conceptually. Like as a coach, if I want to run flood or I want to run snag or, pick whatever concept you want to run, can you teach that where the kids know, okay, number one always does X route, two does Y route, and three does Z route. And then now I can move them around. That's why I wrote several books kind of directly on this concept. I wrote Coaching Football Like a Basketball Coach, One Play Many Ways, The Play Caller's Guide. All those books talk about how do we kind of layer things for our kids. How do we teach this is snag? What if I want to run snag with a tight end involved? What if I want to run snag with the running back in the backfield involved? What if I want to run snag and I want to run it out of a condensed set? So we've got to teach the concept for them, and that gives us hopefully, the ability to get to it a lot of different ways. So you want to teach the why, what are we trying to accomplish to everybody, and then you want to start to kind of layer it, allowing you the ability. Okay, so we teach Buck. We say anyone outside the guard is blocking down, because we may not be in a tight end wing set. Probably we will. We might be in just a tight end. We might be in just a wing. We could be in a bunch set. We could be in who knows what. So we want to teach anybody outside the guard for running Buck or blocking down. Same thing with our other run concepts. And same thing with our pass concepts. We want to teach most outside guy does this. Most inside guy does this. Middle guy does whatever. If we're running a three receiver concept, we're running a full field concept, like some kind of crossing routes. Who runs the crosser? Is it the most inside? Is it the next most inside? Can we tag it? Or it's a different guy? Well, you can't do that if your kids don't know the rules of all the routes. Like you get into where I'm going to teach whatever route concept, and I only teach it from one formation. When you switch formations, you're going to kind of blow their mind. Like, what's the rule now that we're in trips instead of double twins? What's the rule if we're in a condensed set, instead of running a fade route, do I need to convert that to a corner? What am I going to convert this to? So you got to teach a lot of that stuff up front, which is difficult for coaches because you really have to slow down. So you can't put in 30 concepts. You can only put in maybe 2. And that's hard for a coach because we see all this other stuff. So we have to kind of eliminate what are we not going to use and what are we going to be really good at, and then teach it at a deep enough level where our kids can adjust. And that doesn't even talk about defense. So you can flip over on defense and you want to do the same thing. We want to teach rules to our kids. So a really simple one is who has the outside leverage, who has the inside leverage if we get a run. So if we get run action, whose job is it to turn it back in? And whose jobs are it to fit from the inside out? You got to do that with any concept you might teach, because we teach it where our outside backer, he's the edge player. What if we run some kind of stunt where he comes inside? Somebody else has to take on that responsibility. So you got to teach these rules and these concepts where the kids know really quickly, am I an outside or an inside fitter? Then you got to do the same thing in coverage. What is my job in coverage, in this base coverage we're going to do? That's why I think it's really difficult to run a lot of coverages well. You can run a lot of coverages. You probably need one or two where we can do this coverage with all our blitzes with any set and we feel comfortable. And it's okay to have other ones. That's fine. But those are going to be kind of limited in how much you use them. Or you're not going to be able to teach the same depth on those just because you don't have time. There's so many hours in a day, and you got to be careful because coaches kind of fall into one or two categories. The guys that are kind of lazy, you're probably not listening to this podcast, and they just want to be simple because it's easy to be simple. Or what the guys are that are probably listening to this, that you have the danger of doing too much. Like
Yes.
you love football, you want to do so much for your kids, you want to give them so many answers. But if you give them too many answers, you're going to kind of almost have a inverse reaction, inverse, whatever the word is I'm looking for here. Not a good effect.
Right.
So we got to be real careful on what we're teaching on this stuff. And I know Daniel will probably talk about it, and we got more questions coming. But as you go down this path, I think you have to teach deep. In order to teach deep, you can't teach a bunch. You can only teach a couple things with great depth, and that allows you to kind of tag things, do different things, where now your kids can make adjustments.
Yeah. I kind of think about it as just teaching in families. Like even we'll stick offensive here, just thinking gap scheme. If you get away from if you just teach it, what is gap scheme? Well, generally it's a bunch of block downs, someone's pull kick, someone's pull wrap, right? And then you can systematically add in or tag who's doing the kicking and the wrapping. So like historically, we've taught power and GH counter are the same play. We tag an alternate call, which flips the blocking responsibility. So our kick man, generally an H-back and power, wrap man's guard. So if we tag it alternate, they just switch. Those two know that, okay, now the guard's the kick man and the H-back's the wrapper. So by formation as a coach, I set up the scheme to work. I set up the alignment to work. The kids just learned it's a bunch of block downs, somebody's pull kick, somebody's pull wrap. So we've taken that family and taught it, and now that works everywhere. Buck is just gap scheme. Cool. Now it's two guards instead of a guard and an H-back. It doesn't, you know what I mean? The kids can learn the concept of block down, kick out, wrap to a backer, and they're just waiting to hear who gets to do the kicking and the wrapping this time. So that's been, kind of keeping it in that family. It gets into the rules, right? Keeping the rules the same as much as possible. I can't do that. I can't have families if my right tackle has 3 different down blocking rules. So getting something like Kenny, I know you're big in gap down backer, like me too. I think that's amazing because it just solves all the problems. We don't even double team to the front side of power anymore. And in fact, with a lot of the 3 front stuff, it's just pushing that right guard or the guard on the play side. It gets him too far outside anyway, trying to get to a 4-eye and double him up. Against a traditional 3 tech or a 2, sure, you can still get there. But anyway, that was just a rule. Why have another rule? Just block down, gap down backer. And then, we found we can kick the first guy that shows up, cut up underneath, and we're off to the races. So I can tag GH counter, GT counter, power, buck, all of those things, pin and pull. They all just fit the same rule. It's just a family, right? By keeping those rules the same. If I try to go out and have a bunch of complicated rules and 13 if-thens every time we call a play, that quickly falls apart. So the simplicity in blocking rules allows you to be more complex in plays called, if you will. So I know you're a big formations over plays kind of guy, and I agree. But when you turn these things into just families, hey, we're going to go run some gap scheme, you get to kind of expand your plays as well. I have a little fly flying around. It's stinking February. What are we doing here? Yeah, and it's kind of on defense on the same thing, right? If you don't just teach kids cover 3, right? We teach what is a 4 under 3 deep concept. And if I blitz a guy, now they understand like there aren't 4 guys to drop. So we have to switch to this 3 over 3, 3 under 3 over kind of concept, right? So it just allows you to take it and make it a family, which is how we teach a lot of our blitz constructs on defenses. When we're blitzing a guy, I don't want to change 11 people's responsibilities. I'm going to change 2. One guy's going to blitz. One guy's going to take his spot in coverage and add it to his own, whether that be a inside backer, outside backer, or whatever. So anyway, much like what you said, just allows for those quick adjustments because it's just rules-based, family-based. So let's kind of go through here. The second part here is kind of keeping that language the same throughout your system. So how does that help you, once again, getting these concepts installed for kids?
Well, I mean, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier is, you put the pressure on yourself as a coach because you ought to know whatever you're running better than anybody. And that allows you as a coach to see the whole field. So if I'm talking about on offense, okay, maybe I want to run, I don't know, I want to run go out. It's an easy concept. You might call it whatever you call it. But when I give twins, they're giving a hard cover 2, and I'm probably going to take the fade ball. Maybe I don't like that look. So as a coach, what if I go trips and I soften the corner up, or maybe they're locking up with number 1, and I know I can throw the out route. Kids don't know any of that stuff. It puts the pressure on you as the coach to say, if I want to throw this ball, I can dictate the coverage by getting into this set, or maybe I go condensed set and they back that corner up. Something in that world where I am the one now who's having to do all the thinking. My quarterback knows if we're running go out, he reads the corner. Like that's what he knows. And he's throwing one of those 2 guys. So he knows that. I, as the coach, can kind of dictate who he's probably going to throw to using a formation, a motion, a set, or whatever it might be. So that's the big part for me is when you teach things concept base wise and you don't have a lot of them and you use formations like we do, that's kind of how we get to different things. And Daniel alluded to families, and I think that's a good way to kind of teach it. We run buck a lot of different ways, and we run buck out of a lot of formations. We don't really change our blocking scheme a ton, but we will change our blocking scheme on a few other run concepts that we have where, maybe we're not going to pull backside guard, we're going to pull backside tackle. Most people call that dart, and they look at that as a different play than pulling just the guard. But if you get into this tag world, like Daniel was kind of going through, you're changing the blocking for one kid. We mainly do that in the RPO game. Like we kind of do it in the RPO game of, okay, we want to RPO this kid or this kid or this kid or whatever kid it wants to be. So we have words that tell that specific lineman, hey, your rule's supposed to be whatever. But now with this tag we're giving you, you have a different rule because we're reading that player. So that's one way you can get into it is by using tags. So if you're keeping your language the same, except for 1 or 2 kids, they don't really have to learn that much. So I kind of think about formation wise for us, where each kid learns maybe 2 or 3 words to move their formation. It's not very much on the kid, but on the coach, as you start to kind of go, my goodness, I've got 3 formation books I've put out, 98 formations, 90 formations, 90 formations. I don't have great math, but that's close to 300 formations. And we're only teaching kids, 3 words, 4 words. That's right. That's how exponentials work. That little whatever number on top of the parentheses. That's how you get to multiple formations, and your kids just learn 3, 4 words at most. So that's how we want to teach that. That's how we also want to teach our tags in our RPO game. We have a base rule we put in. If we run the ball over here, here's the rule on the play side, here's the rule on the back side. So we can just do that and get into whatever formation and just do that and be okay with that. Or we can tag a different RPO to the backside or to the play side or wherever it might be. One kid learns one thing, and we try to make sure that our quarterback, the same RPO, tells them to read the same defender. So again, you're getting a little more expensive, but you're not getting way expensive for the kids' sake. So I think that's the idea with a lot of coaches when they see what we run on offense or they see what we run on defense. They go, Coach, y'all are doing a whole bunch of stuff. We are. Like our coaches, they got to learn a lot because there is a lot. You got to know how to talk to each kid. But for our kids, they learn one word or two words and they learn a rule. And the same thing if you flip it over to defense. I think I got two examples on here. One, like for us, we may use the word edge. Well, edge in our defensive structure tells our guy, you're coming, guess where? You're coming off the outside. You're coming off the edge of the formation. Well, if all 8 of our back 8 learn that word, we can bring any of them off the edge. We just tag who it is. They all know edge means I come off the edge. They should know edge means I have outside responsibility. So when I edge blitz, I'm playing the deepest hip in the backfield. So if I get speed option, well, I have the pitch because that's the deepest hip. If I get back wheel, I'm going to peel to go cover that because I have deepest hip. If I have back cross the quarterback, I've got quarterback on zone read because, again, we're teaching one concept. You're off the edge. You have the deepest hip that comes at you or goes away from you. So now that kid can react to, I just mentioned, speed option, zone read. He can react to running back routes out of the backfield. He can react to nothing that shows up, just coming off the edge. And now we can do that with all 8 of our kids. Do the same thing kind of Daniel mentioned in coverage. We got a specific word, like if we're getting a third down call and we know you have a tendency that you want to throw the ball to the sideline at the sticks. So let's just say we call that word sticks. So we can tag who that is. It may be the corner that we want to just squat on the sticks. It may be a safety. We're going to let the corner play deep cover 3, and we're going to bring the safety to rob that spot. It could be an outside backer. We're going to show blitz, and he's going to sprint to first down marker at the sticks. So now we can get 3 different guys to give you 3 different looks, but really they're just learning basically a roll cover 3 and putting somebody hard at the first down marker. So we want to have all those little tweaks within our defensive structure also. So we can present to you as an offense, my goodness, they're bringing a ton. They're bringing different guys every play, and they're giving 3 different coverages. Well, it really is just roll cover 3, getting to it 3 different ways.
Yeah, that's the way that we can make that look super complex to the opponent is probably my favorite part of the tag world. So kind of keeping the language the same. Like I want to make sure that there's no wasted words. So what I found is like if every blitz is called something different, you're trying to memorize 25 words or whatever, right? And Kenny, I love what you're doing with like blitz paths, right? Just have a word means we're going in the A gap on the weak side, and I'll just tell who to go there. That makes it super simple versus trying to say a different word that starts with a letter that the player is supposed to do. It just gets really complicated, and all of a sudden you've got this wasted words, really. So I like the blitz paths concept on defense. Even getting back to offense, right? It's like these tags, when they become, I call them modular. Though if you keep your language very modular, and those you talked earlier about a skill position kid might learn 3 tags or 5 tags or whatever his thing is for formation. I can use it anywhere. It becomes universal, which means it's not a wasted word. If I want a kid to line up a wide receiver to line up right off the hip of the tackle, and I have a word for that, it shouldn't change that word because I'm in 3 different formations, right? That doesn't work. So that would be wasted words. And I think that the excessive verbiage slows kids down, right? You're gonna have to. They're trying to remember, and they're going through that Rolodex in their head of what did that word mean, and does it even mean anything for me? And so we simplify this down. We make our words all mean the same thing for everyone. No wasted words. I also like in our concepts, right? We're going to shorten play calls. And that language is going to be the same throughout offense and defense. We want shorter, almost one word if you can get there. If I can say one word, if I can say Skittles and my kids know to line up in trips right and run mesh, I don't have to say trips right, Z does this, X does this, H does this, B does that. I don't need to tell every kid what to do. And I understand that people want to sound more NFL when they're making their play calls, so they may get into that. I understand there's times that like you need that ownership to tell kids what to do because they can't figure it out. And that's okay. If you have to tell your kids, 1 or 2 of them, what to do on every play, sure, you can tag those in. But I think kids run really, really fast if, like earlier, you just stick with families, and then those families are one word. Kenny, if I remember right, you used to use weapon calls as your buck. And that's, kind of, we have the same situation over here. We just use this family of words even that gets us into a family of plays. So you can kind of start combining those. Now simplicity on simplicity for us stays simple. For the opponent, they can't operate at that speed and having to answer all the formation stuff we're doing. So
And you can do, like, you can theme up, you could go week to week, all right, this week we're going to do animals as our runs, and this week we're going to do locations as our runs. So I think sometimes we overcomplicate what we call things. Like, we got to call this cover 6 because it's cover 2 and cover 4. Why don't we just split field coverage and have a base rule? Like, that's way easier for my kids. Or we're going to call this, we're going to call this buck because that's what it was written down as. Well, that's fine. Like Daniel said, what if we call it Skittles, and the other one's Starburst, and the other, you can call it whatever you want as long as your kids know it. I think that's sometimes we overcomplicate things.
For sure. And then that really takes us back to that, even with the verbiage here, keeping that language the same. Stick with rules. Rules are they don't let you down generally. You could paint yourself into a corner with things like program rules, but on the field, we talked gap down backer earlier. If it's just gap down backer, unless this tag takes you out of it, that's a heck of a lot easier to learn than memorizing a whole bunch of stuff, right? So rules over memorization. You talked about in your past concepts, and like the rules are, if we're in this concept, we're going to do this thing. And, well, I don't need that wide receiver memorizing. I go out and run a hitch. I go out and run a hitch, because eventually that may not be true, right? But if he learns the rules of like, what's this concept trying to do? We talk about with coverage. The rules are we're going to be 4 under 3 deep. We can kind of manipulate that with tags versus him memorizing every single word. You just get it. I think rules helps out a lot versus trying to give him a bunch of things to try to memorize. Let's jump to the last piece here, Kenny, and we're cruising through today, man, which is good for you because I know you got stuff today. So,
oh yeah,
how do we piece this all together so that success shows up on Fridays?
Well, I think the idea is, again, put the pressure on you as the coach. You think about like Baylor back in the Art Briles days was putting up points all over the place. Tennessee's still running the same stuff. They're running like what they call choice, which literally is the only guy we're going to throw to is the guy we tagged to run the choice route. Everyone else is just basically window dressing, and this guy makes a choice. And usually it's 1 or 2 choices, or maybe 3 at most. And they ran a whole offense off that and scored a lot of points. So I think the idea here for coaches a lot of times is you don't have to have a lot of stuff in if you know when to call it, how to call it, and how to set it up. You can be successful with really whatever you want to run in the pass or the run game. But a lot of times we put in so much stuff that we don't really understand when and where and how to call it. I think that's, to me, is key if you get into this world. Is I've got these tags and I've got these abilities, I've got these things to do. How do I use them to set up the most optimal play call? Like for me, I've already mentioned the last couple of years we've really delved into formations. Well, last year and probably this year with an experienced quarterback, we're probably going to lean more into the RPOs to help us there. Where now I'm going to lean more into him because he can handle more, solving some of our problems with leaning into the RPO world. And so we don't have to run a bunch of different runs. We're probably going to continue to run buck sweep and our other base runs, but we're going to look at different ways that we can allow him to solve some problems, pulling and throwing or pulling and running, because that's where we're going to be good this year. Next year, when he graduates and I've got a new quarterback, we'll probably lean more into formations or whatever that quarterback is strong with. And so if you have a system and you have words and you have ways to get to it, you can change year to year, or more importantly, you can change series to series, because sometimes something's not working. Like, okay, we're doing all these formations, they're just living in their base and just shutting us down. So now what? Or what's your next answer? Is that RPOs? Is that play action? Is that false keys? What is it on the offensive side of the ball? Or on the defensive side of the ball, we're throwing the kitchen sink at them and they're still gashing us. So what's my answer? How do I get another guy in the box? How do I, um, you know, put another, inside fitter? And what am I going to do to get that? Well, you've got to have simple rules that the kids can go to that allow you to kind of get to that quickly. And so I think that's important. You have the verbiage, maybe it's on defense, to know if we call X, whatever it is, we're in cover 0 or invert cover 2, and we're bringing both safeties down in the box. Do we have something that tags us and lets us know that? So for us, we have a call where we're going to show too high, but both of them are creeping, and they're going to be playing flat-footed at 7 yards. So we now feel like we got 9 dudes in the box. But how do we get to that? What's the word to tag us to that? What coverage are we running behind that? What are we going to do if we get empty? What are we going to do if we get trips? What are we going to do if we get, so when you put these calls in, how are we going to get to that stuff? And so you've got to have different tools you can reach and grab to see what you're seeing right then. I think it's important you have that stuff. I think it's important in order to do all this, you got to teach the overall concept of, like Daniel kind of mentioned, if we're in some kind of 2 deep or 3 deep or 1 deep or no deep, whatever that looks like, who's where, and if this guy blitzes, can I replace him? So this year we actually ran a little bit of corner blitz. First time we've run it in a long time. We had a really athletic corner. So we got to know if he's going. We didn't even call the coverage. We just knew if we called corner blitz, the other DBs better know we're in roll cover 3, because that's something we're going to have to be in to do this. If we're bringing, an outside backer, we taught our DBs the same thing. If one of the outside backers is coming, we're in roll cover 3. We're in a hard cover 2 to where he's blitzing from, and we're cover 3 behind it. And that eliminated a lot of verbiage. Like they knew if this guy's going, this is our coverage. So I didn't have to now give a front call and a back end call. One word. And this is the coverage. This is the blitz. This is how we're getting to it. But 90% of the time, we want to have the flexibility to have a different front call and a different back end call. So we've got to have the words and the verbiage to do that. Same thing for me, heavy in the RPO game. I already kind of mentioned it. We want to be able to tag, let's say we want to run a in breaking, glance route, dig route, whatever you want to call it, stick route. Okay. Can I run it to the most inside player? Okay. All right. What about the next guy? What about the far outside guy? What about across the field? How do I get all of these guys to know you've got to get to this spot, because that's who we're reading? So you got to have verbiage that you've taught your kids to do this. And luckily, if you're listening to this podcast, hopefully it's March or February, you have time. You can't do this stuff in August. Like, this stuff's got to be put in, at least in your own brain and your coach's brain, your quarterback's brain, way before then. Then you can kind of start to roll out the carpet for everybody else.
That's a really good point. You better start now if you're going to do this. I think, to get it all pieced together, I still love the military's concept of just crawl, walk, run, right? You've got to start small. Kenny, I've really adopted your big, little big concept for practice, for installs. Kids need to know the why. So during your crawl phase, you're looking to teach that why. Here's the big picture. And then we start adding a little bit. You add speed and you add pressure. And dealing with pressure, you pressure test the stuff in practice, right? Like, you want to go fast. So I don't care if it's offense or defense. If you think kids are getting to know a concept well, put it on the go, right? Let's go fast. I call it like a chaos period. We're going to go out and we're going to pressure test our kids. Can you do this in a hurry? Because as we know, that's why hurry up offenses exist, right? To test a defense's mettle. What can you guys really get called in and figured out when there's no time to do that? Scripting the hard stuff. I think if you are starting to install this now, or you're getting in your 7-on-7, you're listening to this podcast and you're going into fall camp and you think you've done your due diligence. Don't go out and script the things that are reads and the things that make kids think against the easiest look. right? If you want it to be successful on Friday night, test their rules, right? I talked about, gap down backer for everybody in most of our plays. Okay, well, we better go out and be able to test that rule against a whole bunch of different fronts that aren't advantageous to them being right. Okay, what are you going to do if there's a 3-tech and a backer standing behind him blitzing through the same gap? My rule is gap down backer. Well, coach, which one do I take? And how do I talk about the fact I have 2 of them right now? So getting them in a situation they have to, the rules get not broken, but stretched, and they got to figure out how to sort all that out. So really just script that hard stuff. And I think, really to put it all together, you need to do the basics. You need to get it on the board. So, we want to focus on player meetings. We're going to walk through an install. We're going to walk through a thing so that we see it on the board. Then we're going to walk through it that half speed, then full speed, and then, like I said, pressure test it. So I think that's the best way to put all these things together. Adding in layers, layering is a great way. It's a great concept to have here, coach. I know you say that all the time, that your defense is layered, your offense is layered. And that's great because it comes back to that foundation. If you can't run buck, your RPO is not going to be any good off of it either, right? And the RPO is there to help, like Cameron and I say, protect your base. We want to protect buck because it's working well. We don't want people to be able to adjust to it and stop it. But if buck ain't working, the stuff that you're doing off of it ain't going to work either. So you really need to get that board work, get that half speed reps, the full speed reps, make the first thing work, make the foundation strong, and then you can kind of add on here with all the other stuff. Sweet. I think that's it, really, man. I think we kind of checked all the boxes here. I want to talk about situation of the week. I got a good one for you.
Okay.
We'll see what your answers are, and maybe I'll give an answer. I don't know. You just scored to go up 28 halfway through the third quarter, and it's against an opponent that was supposed to be a tough challenge. You didn't get as many reps with your 2s in practice because you assumed this was going to be a dogfight. What's your thought process? How are you communicating with your players and your coaches? And when do you realistically start that subbing process with those players that didn't get as many practice reps?
That's a good question. I think a lot of guys don't think through this. I don't think through this very often because we're always kind of work on let's get the win. So usually for us, it's a mad scramble at halftime if we get in this situation. But I think for me, we're lucky in Arkansas where there's kind of a certain number that signals what's called the mercy rule. So for us, that number is 35. So we've just kind of abided by our kids kind of know at 35, the clock will continue to run. Realistically, there's no chance they can come back. So that becomes we're going to get all our 2s. We're going to try to empty our bench and get them all in. But where you're talking about, we're not quite there yet. So you're at 28, which in my mind means they could still come back. But we're probably having a lot of the discussion at that point of who's going both ways that we could take some miles off their legs. Where are we at carries with our running back or whatever our guy is, where we can maybe get him out and save him? Who are some kids we want to see out there? So a lot of times what we'll do in that situation is we'll leave our first O-line out, unless we got one that's kind of banged up. Try to leave our first O-line out. A lot of times, depending on our quarterback situation, we'll leave our first quarterback out there if we're putting younger skill kids. If we're not, let's say that we really don't have the need to do that, we'll probably then put our number 2 quarterback in there and let him kind of get some reps. Same thing on defense. We're going to look at, okay, which guys, 2-way guys, we cannot get them hurt. Let's try to get them off if we can. But we're probably not wholesale changing things until we get to that mercy rule. Now, if we're 28 points with 4 minutes to go, 8 minutes to go, that may change the picture a little bit. But I've seen too many times young coaches will do one or two things. They won't ever put them in until it gets way out of hand and you're not developing anybody. So that's not good. But I've also seen the opposite, usually in B team games. Usually it's a 7th grade game or a junior high game where the drop off is dramatic and the coach will pull his kids too early. And then you have the embarrassing decision of, well, crap, we got to put our starters back in. I'll give you a real life example. So my son plays on the 7th grade basketball team here. And I think our coach does a great job. I'm not sharing this story to say he did anything wrong. I'm sharing it to kind of go with this. So basketball is really tough because usually 1 through 5 and then 5 through 10 or 6 through 10, there's a huge drop. I mean, big time drop, especially at 7th grade level. So we're playing a game. He's up about 16 points, probably about to start the 4th quarter, kind of that world. I'm looking at my daughter sitting next to me. My future son-in-law wants to coach basketball. And I said, this is where it gets really tough as a coach because he wants to play these other kids. But this team's not bad, and we're only up 16. Well, he decided, let's go ahead and put the 2s in. Good. My son was one of the 2, so I'm kind of glad that happened.
Let's go.
As a dad. But 16 turned into 10, turned into 6, turned into 4 with about 40 seconds to go, and now he's got to put his starters back out there, which is embarrassing for everybody in the gym. Well, then the starters have been sitting on the bench, promptly go in and turn it over for a layup. So now it's 2. Now we're inbounding up 2 with about 30 seconds to go, and we turn it over, and they get a clean look at a 3 that rims out. We get the rebound, we end up winning the game. But you can kind of see where I'm going here, especially at a varsity level. Man, I'd be careful. 28 sounds like a lot, but I've seen it go from 28 to 14 like that. And now where are you?
Yeah, that's kind of what this is, that riding the line, right? You're kind of stretching the like you said, the mercy rule. We don't have a clean rule in Oklahoma that forces that. You can just have that conversation at halftime about running the clock in the second half. So it's kind of a coach's agreement. And I've seen people not take it. And we talked about that game this year that we finished at like 12:30 at night because of a storm, and then the coach was down pretty bad and didn't want to do the mercy rule. But it is kind of a weird spot because if you put in a freshman quarterback to get him some reps and he goes out and throws a pick 6, hey, what now? Obviously, it's way close right now. It's super uncomfortable, and you hate to do that to him. You go out and put an offensive line that's a freshman, and he gets your starting quarterback hurt because you're not trying to replace. So you can kind of see where this is that line of which way are we going to go. I think it's just another situation I think coaches have to think about, which is why I wanted to look at it tonight and just kind of see what your thoughts were. Sweet. We'll talk about these sponsors one last time. We'll get out of here. If you guys haven't already, go to asports.com. Check out the video boards there. You can email mark.bridges@asports.com. Check out all the dream building tools that he has for you to get your video board up in your gym or on your field, wherever it is that you need to put something. winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. Go over and see what Doug's building. Like I said, this year he's really getting into the opponent breakdown stuff. So while you're going through your week, you can just upload all that huddle data that you've spent all week putting in anyways and let it spit out the reports. Yeah. Kenny, tell me about, we forgot about your books. Tell me real quick about your books that you got out right now.
And sure. Yeah, we got the 0-10 book to 10-0. Man, that thing's going pretty quick, and it's been a really cool. I get a lot of stories back from that, so that's been really neat. Where a guy will read it and, hey, coach, we were 0-10, and this resonated with me. Or the last half of the book is about going from 6-4 and 7-3 to 10-0. Like it's that extra climb. So a lot of stories from guys who have read it, or it's resonated with them, and that's the whole reason we wrote the book, was not to brag on here's what we did. It was more, this was tough. And these are things you need to kind of think about. Then we have the Buck book out. So it's 175 pages of buck sweep all the way from under center to where it started in the shotgun to where it's going in the shotgun, to some of the rules we've made from it. Man, if you want to know buck sweep, you don't even have to run the gun tee. That's a really, really good resource for you to get. Then I think I've got several other books. You got all the team things books we kind of mentioned on here. What would go good with this podcast is the Football Like a Basketball Coach. Wrote that book a long time ago, and a lot of what we're talking about right now is what I wrote about. And then the One Play Many Ways, same idea that we're talking about right here. Run one play. How do you layer it, formation it, adjust it? So both those resources, if you enjoy this podcast, would probably go good with that. All that's over at fbcoachsimpson.com.
Perfect. Love it. Don't forget, if you're listening live, and actually I'm trying to think when this one comes out. I think we're 2 weeks out. So I think upon this coming out on the podcast, we're in Boston tomorrow. So my family and I are already there. Magic Trick. And Kenny, I know you're flying in pretty soon. So if you haven't already gotten tickets for either the 425 defensive clinic that's going on in Boston or Kenny's Gun Tea, it's going to be a great time to be in Boston one way or another. Hopefully it's not too cold. So check out joedanielfootball.com/425 Boston to get your tickets for the 425 clinic. I think it's going to be great. The formatting is very similar if you've been to one of Kenny's. Look, we are still coaches I stole and recreated. So we're going to get some Friday night, some Saturday morning, some on the field installs, some social time. It's going to be wonderful. So jump over to that or go sign up at fbcoachsimpson.com and check out the I assume your clinics are still there.
Yeah, Boston's not sold out yet, so there's still a little room at that one. And I've got them coming up in Tampa. So if you want to come to Florida, where it's a little warmer, that's kind of more my style. That one's going to be later in March, and we got a bunch on there. Just fbcoachsimpson.com. You can find all the clinics.
Perfect. I am on Twitter /X at Coach Chambo OK. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Check out the website. The Patreon's still live. And of course, the YouTube. Kenny, where can we find you, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So fbcoachsimpson.com. Now we do have the new website, gunteasystem.com. So if you want specifically Gun Tea, clean it up a little bit. At FB Coach Simpson on Twitter or fbcoachsimpson@gmail if you want to hit me up with a question or whatever.
Awesome. Love it. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter /X. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.